Hi, I'm Connie Miller from Connie's Kitchen here at Treetop Lodge, but as you can see, I'm not in the kitchen today. I'm in the living room here at the lodge because we have the big Lone Ranger Festival and Parade this weekend, and I'm hoping to do what I did last year when we were able to conjure up, I guess is the good word for the Lincolns, and I'm hoping that we can create that magic again and bring General and Mrs. Custer here to the lodge to spend some time with us. So wish me luck. Well, that's what it's all about, right? Well, I'll take a deep breath. Everybody believe, because it's all about believing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in welcoming, I'm very excited, General George Armstrong Custer and his lovely wife, Libby. Welcome to the lodge.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you.
You're here. You're here.
It is a lovely lodge, I might add. Certainly pales our quarters at Fort Lincoln.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, what was that like at Fort Lincoln?
Fort Lincoln, for the post as remote as it is actually, by our standards, quite comfortable. Libby and I have our own home, as befitting our rank, my command of the 7th Cavalry. And the house, although actually the first time we had a very bad fire, and it did burn down.
Oh.
It happened in the wintertime. It's since been rebuilt, and all of our other officers also have their own homes. And so unless you visit the frontier post, it's not the typical stereotype that you would imagine that a fort would be. It's all out in the open. The cavalry is actually encamped, the regiment is encamped about a half a mile away.
Okay. Oh, that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's not what I would think of when you think of a fort like that. Well, how would something like that, which would almost be a neighborhood, how would that compare to what you've seen on your travels here in this time?
My mind is still spinning, trying to catch up with the speed at which everything moves now. We're used to a letter from Fort Lincoln to Michigan or to Washington taking a week or more just to get there, and then another week or more to come back, oftentimes longer. The speed is just overwhelming.
Sometimes too fast.
Well, you've been here longer than I would, so I wouldn't know, but it has just gone so fast that it's difficult to fathom. I
would imagine. Have you seen, and I know you've traveled before, this was the first time I was lucky enough to draw you in, have you seen the traffic, the roads?
Speechless, which for me is actually a rare event. But yes, the speed, the individuality of the whole thing, I think that's what has gotten me the most. We're used to traveling on a train for the long distances. When Libby first joined me at Fort Riley in '66, the train line didn't quite make it all the way to the fort. It stopped about 5 miles short. And so I went out with a detail with a wagon, and we had to go out to where the train line ended and load everybody up, her and the dogs. And the dogs, of course, that's a story in and of itself. But the dogs got out of hand. And then it was a 5-mile trek back to the post.
Yeah.
And so from Monroe, where Libby had been staying, waiting for my word, out to Fort Riley took her most of a week to get there. And from what I've seen now, you can get from here to there in
a matter of hours.
Half a day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I can't help but say I kind of envy your experience. When things are slower and you can appreciate them more, arriving someplace must be a wonderful experience. Because you've really worked to get there.
Yes, it's a great relief. The quiet out on the prairie, the stars, just the small animal noises, an occasional coyote in the distance is actually quite peaceful. You're right, it is.
Well, you'll find that we have a lot of that here. First of all, you're in the middle of what we call horse country.
Oh,
there are a lot of farms out here with beautiful horses. We also have an alpaca farm next door. And then in the evening, we have the coyotes that come in up on the ridge, and you'll hear them. And if we have a clear night, it's very quiet, and you can see all the stars. So maybe you'll be able to relate to that.
You have alpacas.
Alpacas.
Are they not from South America?
They are. They are.
We've heard of such creatures, but of course had never seen any.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing them.
Yes, they're wonderful. And Nancy is my partner here, and she actually owns this property. She's always treated them as they are. She's never made pets out of them. So when you see them, they're very genuine, and this is well, no, this is a unicorn. That's a whole different thing. But no, the alpacas are wonderful. They really. She has 49.
49?
Yeah.
And I presume some of those are for meat?
No.
No.
Meat hasn't really taken off in the United States. Primarily, alpacas in the United States are fiber animals. They're shorn once a year, and then their fiber is processed and
I see.
turned into many, many, many different things. In South America, it's different. They harvest the whole animal, but that's a different culture. But here, they're primarily for show and for fiber.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you spin, knit, weave?
No.
No, neither do I. But I tell you what, when I see the alpaca fiber, it makes me want to try.
She does take part with the sewing with the other military wives,
Yeah.
but no, those materials you ladies have never used.
No. It's just like shearing sheep. You know, there are women that do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not one of them.
Well, and I'm sure too, you know, as the general's wife, you have a lot of things, duties to perform and things you need to do. It probably keeps you very busy.
Usually head organizer, dinners and dances and
Libby's a marvelous hostess.
I'm sure. And I would imagine because of your rank, you're like the senior woman too. So you have the new wives that come out, they're probably uncomfortable or nervous in a new place, and you're there for them.
right.
Yeah, that must be difficult. How did you feel when you would first arrive at one of these distant outposts?
You just survey the area, and of course, Audie here tells me what the safeties are,
Yes.
and you live within those safeties.
And have you enjoyed post life?
Most of the posts that we've been at, yes. Fort Riley was my favorite.
Yeah,
And Georgetown was another post that we were at that I enjoyed.
yeah.
So, and during the war, when I was not allowed forward, then I was stationed in Washington. So I did get to be included in a lot of the president's affairs,
Oh, certainly.
parties and you know, teas and get-togethers. So I was in a big circle there.
I would imagine, I mean, you know, a war is never a good thing, but I would imagine to a degree that is your life. It's got to be quite exciting for both of you, really.
Well, it was best to be as close to him as possible.
Well, certainly.
Because then I didn't have to guess.
Yeah.
But when I was not permitted forward, then it was always fear.
Then you have to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, she's being somewhat modest. Libby was one of the very, very few wives that General Meade permitted in our camps in the forward areas when we were not on active operations. Most other wives were not permitted.
I would imagine they would be more of a distraction. And I mean, if something happens, now you have to worry about them also.
She got quite used actually to, we would have an operation come up on a very short notice, and our goodbyes would happen in less than 24 hours. And fortunately, by that time, we didn't have to go through that type of a rigorous schedule for more than a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, things happen very quickly, especially during wartime, and things change very quickly. So you obviously have worked it out. You know, you look very happy together. Can you tell me about your dress?
It's a ball gown
Yes.
for dinners and dancing.
This is specially commissioned, I would assume.
Oh, yes.
I mean, did you make this or did you have it made for you?
I had it made for me.
Did you? It's
Yeah.
stunning.
I picked out the material and the trims and everything, and designed how I wanted it. So,
It's beautiful.
yes.
Beautiful. Now your uniform is distinctive.
Well,
Was
actually,
that your own style evolving?
Actually, since the War of the Rebellion, as it's officially known in the government records, the Civil War, officers have always had some degree of leeway as to their uniforms. When I first took command of the Michigan Cavalry Brigade, when I first attained the rank of Brigadier General, I'd had a uniform in mind. General Pleasanton was my mentor, and he and I had spent many hours talking about the presentation of an officer. And with, of course, some career advancement in mind, my first uniform as general was actually made of black velvet, quite hot in the summertime.
I would imagine.
I adopted what the Confederates had adopted on their officers' uniforms. They're commonly known as chicken guts. It is a naval type of braiding that goes on the sleeves.
Okay, chicken
and the more
guts.
elaborate the braiding, the higher your rank.
I see.
So I had that, as well as my tie, I adopted right away. I wanted my men to be able to see me wherever I went. It was important to me, and General Pleasanton stressed this to me too, that, well, plus from my own personal nature, I was never the type of general to point my men and say, charge. I went to the front and drew my saber and said, follow me. And I think that's what made the difference. And so my boys in the Michigan Brigade also adopted the tie, and quite a few of them in the 7th Cavalry still continue that custom. This one, it's my plains outfit. And again, at our time in the Army, officers have a great deal of leeway as to their uniforms. My adjutant, W.W. Cook, he prefers the light, wide straw hat instead of the standard Army issue because it's lighter, reflects more sun, it's a lot cooler on it and everything. So,
But this is very distinctive of your style, and I think it's reflective of your career and your personality. I mean, I've only read about you until now, but as you said, you were never in the back taking notes. You were right out front, and some would say flamboyant, but I would say effective. I mean, flamboyant is not a bad thing. I like flamboyant. You know,
Well,
you add the buckskin and the red tie, and away you go.
one of my officers in the Michigan Cavalry Brigade, when I first reported to duty, right before the Battle of Gettysburg, and he saw me, and it was reported to me later on that they had read in his diary where he regarded me as my appearance of being a circus rider gone mad.
And you said thank you?
And I said, thank you. Certainly, why not?
Well, if you have personal style and you carry, then you would take that as a compliment,
Yes.
I would think.
I can't say that it hurt me on my way to becoming a Major General volunteer
Yeah.
before the war ended.
Right.
So, yeah, certainly.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, what are your overall, have you seen any of the technology? I mean, I know how you would communicate that you said it would take a letter a week to go, or what? Have you experienced any of the technology here?
The scientific advancements at this moment are almost still beyond my ability to fully grasp. During the Civil War, we communicated over distances on the battlefield with bugle calls. We had the Signal Corps for long distance communication that would use the semaphore flags
Okay.
to send messages. The telegraph, whenever we would have an opportunity to tap into one, certainly provided us with a great deal of quick communication, but again, it was through Morse code. You'd have to have an operator, one who could transcribe the message from the electric code into the printed word.
Yeah.
And now I understand that you can you can be looking at the person that you're speaking to, and there's not even a tapping key or a wire attached to these devices.
It's kind of scary. I mean, it's amazing.
Yes, yes.
But you know, it's funny you say the technology from then till now, and so much of that technology, we've been talking about this, is really the last 20 years. It's been within my lifetime. I mean, I was an adult when these things started to really happen, and I
It's amazing, isn't it?
heard someone say, and I've heard this through history, that if one great advancement is made, so much comes from it. And that's happened so many times through history. And I think electronics, if you will, I think that's one of those things. It's like they unlocked a secret code. And now they have all these communication devices, and maybe too many. It's really hard not to be in touch these days. It's really hard, but I mean, I would long for I can't talk to you now, I'm waiting for the telegraph.
Yes.
They have a built-in excuse.
I wonder how that has affected, though, how people regard with each other, such as when I'd be off on duty, and there would be times, especially out in the plains, when Libby and I wouldn't see each other for 60 days at a time or more. But with that came a fondness of the heart. And when we wrote to each other, you could take the time to explore what your heart was saying and the feelings coming out of it. And it gave us opportunity to wax poetic. And when we did rejoin with each other, it was always such a joyous event.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if these devices from today have not diminished that in some way.
You know, I would have to agree with you. We are so completely in touch and so familiar that there is a degree of that missing. My husband and I, well, when I spend a lot of time at the lodge, I can speak with him on what we call a phone. But I miss him, and I'm actually going to see him later this evening, and I'm so looking forward to it. You know, and he's only 9 miles away, but I'm busy and he's busy. So I kind of get what you mean. I can't imagine 60 when he goes north in the fall. You know, he's out of touch for a week at a time, and I'm busy, but I really miss him. And now you're talking 60 days with absolutely no communication. No. I would think that would. What were his letters like? They must have been fabulous.
Well, that also came back at us. During the Civil War, during the Battle of Trevilian Station. Now, first you have to keep in mind, when I was at West Point, most of my friends were Southern. And my class was originally the class of 62. We were due to graduate in June of 1862. Well, of course, in late 1860 is when the secession crisis began. And as the states left, those friends of mine in the academy, when their state seceded, they withdrew from the academy and went south, which is how I ended up last in my class, Connie. Academically, I was more in the middle, and it was after all the other boys were gone, I ended up at the end of the line.
Okay.
But one of my very best friends was Tex Rosser, and Rosser became a brigadier general of cavalry in the Confederate Army. We faced each other at the Battle of Trevilian Station in Virginia. My brigade was completely surrounded, and it looked very difficult for a few moments. I recall one of my troopers coming up that had several wagons and asked me, "General, what should I do with these wagons?" I said, "Move them to the rear." He said, "General, this fight ain't got any darn rear."
Oh, gee.
So, but in the melee, my headquarters wagon was captured. My brigadier's commission was in it, my uniforms, and quite a bit of correspondence from Libby. Tex, being the lighthearted soul that he is, found great enjoyment in reading some of those letters to his boys in his camp. But to pile insult to injury, some of those letters escaped his custody and ended up in the Richmond Examiner.
Oh, goodness.
Edited, albeit.
Yeah.
However, from that point on, we did decide that we had to carefully monitor our use of double entendres,
Yes.
as they said.
But at the same time, there must have been a little bit of pride there that the whole world could see how incredibly you're loved.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there is that. You know, you may not want your business out there for everybody to see, but at the same time, you got him. and look what he does for you. That's pretty wonderful.
I would ride to the ends of the earth for her. There's no doubt about that. It was difficult to catch her at first. Her father was quite reluctant.
Yeah.
Judge Bacon, when I
Now,
first...
where was that? Was that Michigan?
Monroe.
Okay, Monroe,
Yes.
Michigan.
She was born and raised in Monroe.
Okay.
I'm actually born and raised in Ohio. My older half-sister Lydia married a young man from Monroe, which is how our connection first began there. And anyway, I had become a brevet captain early in the war, but that did not impress Judge Bacon very much. And actually, he forbade Libby and I to see each other. So Libby and I began corresponding to each other through one of her friends. And that's how we kept in touch. But then after I made general, then Judge Bacon started thinking a little more favorable.
Maybe
towards
this
me.
boy has a future after
Perhaps.
all. Maybe he's almost good enough for my little girl. Never quite, but maybe.
I think he wanted more for Libby than just a military husband. But then perhaps he hadn't had the same aspirations that I did.
Well, and certainly being your wife, not to knock an enlisted man's wife, but certainly being married to him would be a lot more exciting. I mean, the traveling and everything, I would assume. And you knew that. That's why you held out.
It was very exciting.
That you recognized that he had a future.
Oh.
So you held on. Good for you. And she was right.
Well, she's also endured a great deal of hardships. When the war ended, we did a year of occupation duty in Texas, and that was a very difficult year.
I'm sure.
And the conditions were harsh. But fortunately, being the ranks that I've held, it often entitles us to better quarters. And so if the men may end up be camping in tents, but I can usually find quarters in a house.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that must have been difficult. But then again, your graciousness and such is such that I'm sure you just took to it very naturally. Wherever you were, you made a home.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
all you can do.
Yeah.
Wherever you're at, you just make the changes.
Now, do your dogs travel with you everywhere?
oh,
Yes.
oh yeah, I've got,
And horses.
had a small menagerie actually. I've been studying taxidermy. I've actually fallen asleep around the campfire at night working on these. Fascinated by the wildlife we've had, and I think that's another thing that has shocked me about this present day is the absence of it. It's as though they're gone. I understand that the buffalo almost vanished.
They have. You'll find more on private farms, probably than you'll. I don't think that there's many at all in the wild anymore. They were just
Astounding.
hunted so relentlessly for
Yes.
sport. A lot of the populations, like the deer population, especially here in Michigan, has made a real comeback, almost to the point where we almost have too many because they're heavy in populated areas, so causing a lot of vehicle accidents and such, which is unfortunate. But then, responsible hunting can only do so much. But yeah, they have made a bit of a comeback, and then, but nature balances out. The coyotes have made a comeback because they have no natural predators, so people have to be on guard with chickens and geese and small animals, that they might have. And I suppose that's true that all the time. Everything shifts, goes back and forth, unless something is irrevocably lost, which unfortunately happens all too frequently in the world these days.
We began to see the declining population of the buffalo by the early 1870s. We were noticing, of course, that was the lifeblood of the Indian tribes on
Right.
the plains, and so the government at that time, they weren't particularly sad that was diminishing because it did work in the government's favor.
It did.
But the
But
government,
no one could foresee that they
No.
would go and never come back. I don't think anybody ever gave that any thought.
and the buffalo is such a grand beast to myself. I actually, we were discussing this a few minutes ago before we sat down here to talk, of when I went out. Okay, let me back up. When we were at Fort Riley, early in our posting out there, and out on patrol, I wanted to take a buffalo by myself. My favorite scout, Bloody Knife, I had seen him take one. And of course,
I'm guessing Bloody Knife was an Indian?
yes.
Yeah, local, okay.
Yes, yes. He was actually from two different tribes, which did not endear him to either one of them, and so he found a home with the Army, as a number of them did. But I wanted to take one by myself. I had observed the Indians riding along these huge beasts at high speed, and they would fire their arrows into its neck with such force, the arrow would actually come out the other side.
Wow.
And unless you have been close to one of these buffalo, you cannot appreciate their size and power. Well, I told my lieutenant I was going to go off and grab a buffalo, which of course did not please him much at all, but I went out alone and I found my quarry. And I galloped alongside of him. He took off at the run, and it was such a thrill. I almost couldn't believe that I was there. It was as though I was setting aside in a different horse watching myself. And I took my pistol, and just as I was about to fire into the buffalo, I'm not sure if it was the buffalo that jinked or the horse, but we sort of collided, and my pistol went off, and I shot my horse in the head.
Oh no.
Well, the horse and I both tumbled into the dust, of which the area was well supplied. And by the time I staggered to my feet, all my equipment was around. I'd lost my firearms, and I looked up, and I'm standing face to face with that buffalo. And I didn't know what to do. For a moment, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, not knowing what was about to happen. And the buffalo, it had a strange look on its face, which today I would almost think he was laughing when he turned and trotted away.
Got you.
Well, my lieutenant did come up with the squad looking for me just in time.
Well, you had
I'd
to be
been
miles
there.
out.
Oh, I was. I was
Yeah.
quite a ways out. The worst part was yet to come. When I got back to the post, the horse I was riding was Custis Lee. He belonged to Libby, and he was her favorite horse.
Oh,
So,
you lost your buffalo and you had to face your wife.
yes, not a good day.
I imagine not.
Not a good day.
What did you think when he would do things like this? Was it just an everyday occurrence? I'm going to go get a buffalo and he takes off?
It's every day.
He would get into some things like that.
Yeah.
But
That's just who he is, right?
yeah.
These
You
are the
can't
things.
change people.
These are the things that she's endured. We had a cook for the longest time. Her name was Eliza. She was a colored woman who came into our lines during the Civil War, and she became my cook, of which I paid her for her services. And she stayed with me and with us from the Civil War, on up into just a few years ago. And she did end up leaving our service. We left on good terms. But there was no one else really that we felt comfortable and trusted with in our household after Eliza left. And so Libby took up a lot of the other duties. She's always been a great trooper.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, is there anything, because I feel like things are fading a little bit, is there anything while you're here this time that you want to see or do? Is there? I mean, hopefully, can't guarantee. Maybe I can arrange it. You are going to ride tomorrow.
Yes.
You are going to be in a fabulous parade down the middle of M24 right through downtown Oxford tomorrow.
And I have heard this gentleman who is called the Lone Ranger is a stalwart for good.
He is. He is.
I'm looking forward
He
to him.
is.
And he also
And he's looking
has a
forward to
Native
meeting you.
American who is close
Tonto.
to him.
Yes,
Tonto.
Tonto. Yep.
Yes, yes. That's
Yes,
it.
and he has graced us for many, many, many years. And now he comes back once a year to visit. And I think that's kind of maybe why all the magic aligns the way it does, and that we're able to have moments like this. Because it's a wonderful thing. And to see the community come together and have a beautiful day. And the weather is supposed to be perfect.
Excellent.
So that's what we're hoping for. So you're going to get to do that, which for you is no big deal to ride a horse and all that. I mean, you're used to that. But
My
wait till you
father-
see what you see downtown.
My father had been around a blacksmith, although he did a number of things, but I had been on a horse since a very young age.
I'm sure.
And I've typically been drawn to stallions, mainly because of their spirit and their energy and their zeal.
To match your own.
They're close to me, and it's always sad. I lost 11 horses under me during the Civil War. And each one of them I remember, and I can still remember their faces. And horses have always been such an important part of our lives and our country. Most people don't know when the Civil War began, President Lincoln, one of his first acts was to issue an embargo on the export of horses. The United States did not export anymore. They were our lifeblood, and now, as you say, they're no longer the lifeblood of the nation, but they're, I guess, just a form of recreation.
Pretty much. But, if you have a chance at any point to look around, you will see some truly beautiful properties and horses out here. Well kept, well taken care of. And so that would please you to know that they have good lives. Not to say all of them, we all have our issues, but no, tomorrow you're going to see some things that you've never seen. Oxford is an old community, was settled in the 1870s. My home in Oxford was built in 1870, the original part of it. And then you're going to see bright, shiny, brand new things. So I think you're going to enjoy the parade as much as the parade's going to enjoy you.
Well, I'm sure we'll hold tight to each other and we'll get through it.
I think you will. I just hope you enjoy it. Well,
We'll try to take it one at a time, one thing at a time. It's easy to get overwhelmed.
Yes, it is. Well, I hope you've enjoyed visiting. I appreciate you cooperating with me and letting me draw you here the way you have.
It's our pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I get these magic moments up here that are just, I always have fun up here, but then there's moments like this that I can't even describe. It's
One of those
thrilling fun.
inexplicable wonders of nature.
It is. And to be able to share it in this way has been very special to me. I hope you've enjoyed it also.
Oh, yes.
And we have to switch gears a bit. I'm going to have to let you fade for a bit, but then later this evening, there are a group of people in town waiting to meet you, and I'm going to take you there.
Looking forward to it.
So, yeah, and you're dressed for it. So, you look so beautiful, and you're so handsome.
Doesn't she make me look good?
She does.
She does.
She really does. She really does. Well, thank you so much. I can't tell you,
Thank
this
you,
has
Connie.
been wonderful, and we will meet again.
Great.
So from Connie's kitchen in the living room at Treetop Lodge. Sadly, I can't hold on forever. The Custers will be fading, but as I said, hopefully we can bring them back this evening for a dinner and tomorrow for the big parade. I'll see you all soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.